Hello, Sifu John again. Just going to get into building in some of the ideas that were, or not ideas so much, but some of the actual physical practices that are going to start building into the larger practice of Yang style. We've done a little bit with stepping, a little bit with warm-ups and Qigong and stuff like that. What I want to talk about right now is the idea that the body works in three planes. We're only really going to, at the moment, talk about the three dimensions. We have vertical, horizontal, and what would be considered, a little bit of shine here, and what would be considered coronal. So coronal as in, like if you're looking, through a telescope, hopefully, at the sun, and there's that, or a star, there's that sort of halo around it kind of thing, or look at the moon with a little bit of haze, there's that sort of shine around that's considered a corona. Not as in the virus, but as in the actual part of, a star or something that we're looking at. That's almost like a flat plane. So the wax on, wax off, if, especially right in front of us here, is, I'm sanding the wall, cleaning the wall, that's flat parallel to me, would be then the coronal plane. So that's kind of what we're talking about with that. So flat, coronal, vertical, horizontal. Now, I'm gonna build up a sort of a practice, a sort of exercise with those three planes, both one hand with both hands going together, both hands splitting. We can have neutral step or in any of the stances that we're going to go through. Probably going to work in not only neutral, but also with probably a bow stance as well, considering that is probably the stance that is most seen with Yang style. So we're going to build that up with it. This is going to be a way to also practice the sort of skill called silk reeling. Silk reeling is the idea that leading from the dantian with the breath, you're making these round, smooth, contiguous motions. If you've ever seen, like, they have like the taking silk out of the worms, or even taking the cocoons, they have to have these sort of long, smooth motions in order to make a singular thread and be able to have that be very fine without kinks or breaks or any of this other stuff. Same thing with our motions. Now, it's usually seen as something kind of with Chen style. The Chen practices even now will build in almost specific breakdown, broken down silk reeling exercises, almost like its own separate kind of qigong routines. And again, a lot of it's based on the Laoja routines, but it's also going to be based on these circles. And there's no reason why Yang can't have this as well, because silk reeling is a skill that should be in internals anyway, not just Chen Tai Chi Chuan. So we're going to work on that. We're going to build up kind of just from the basic idea of these circles and move on. Similar to how we were talking about with the Yichuan sort of postures, the standing postures, and Bruce Kumar Francis's reference to the Taoists having like 200 standing practices. Well, you start having these eight, if we have these eight postures, we have maybe just take two, one here, one here. Now I start playing, splitting together, and maybe I start playing with rotating the palms. Now, if I have a step with that too, I get into the sort of the end picture posture, as I call it, a brush knee twist step. Out of those two postures, just made a couple little changes for it. Same thing with these circles. You put the standing postures and the circles together as transitions, and the transitions are really where the money is. Not only in terms of application, physically for like self-defense, but also in terms of application for the smooth movement of the chi and the energy in the body, as well as the meditative aspect of a relaxed, continuous attention. And our intent being like that thread of silk, long, smooth, able to move out through the whole thing. So we're going to practice those things with these circles. And we're going to, again, start with one hand and in a neutral stance, two hands working together, two hands splitting apart, and then we're going to start playing with other stances and things like that as well. So it's going to be kind of a whole thing in and of itself. And I have found that, again, it's kind of helping me kind of break stuff down to again, foundational sort of qualities. I've found that it's also been helpful for students to start kind of getting a handle on things and a way to build the practice up without going, okay, well, here's grass bird's tail. It's your second class. Here's this, here's this, here's it. It's starting small, laying those small parts of the foundation in order to build it up, to have it be stronger and broader and deeper and everything as we go on. Again, my whole thing as a teacher, whether it was when I was working mental health or even with the internals and everything, is the idea is I want to make the generation coming up under me better than I am. So if I can help them, everyone's going to have whatever sort of it is that they're working on and dealing with that's going to make some stuff maybe have a struggle or something. I can't help with those individual things that much unless we do some sort of individual counseling. And even then, every individual has to do their own work. Aside from that, however, what I can do is try and take, okay, these are the things I struggled with. These are the things I've noticed other people struggle with. Let's address that early on, maybe circumvent that a little bit, and then maybe what took me 9, 10 years maybe takes someone else 8. So then they're able to go through and have a different quality of practice without some of the other stuff in it that might be a problematic. We're going to kind of head off problems at the pass, and I think that this is one way to help do that. Again, tearing stuff apart and then building it back together in ways. So now when we're going over brush knee or something, I can say, hey, look, vertical, horizontal, vertical. So now we have a different context and almost geometrical grid for it. So that's my intent with this sort of section in here that's going to be based on these circles and these planes, and how we're going to work with that. Again, deconstructing, reconstructing, hopefully a strong and thorough practice that can be for whatever someone wants to use for, hopefully kind of everything, because it's internals. You can use it for pretty much everything. So that's the intro to that. See you soon. All right, so we're going to get started on working on the 3 planes circles. Sifu John, and let's get started with it. So as we talked about with the intro video, for the circles at least, the 3 main circles we're going to talk about are vertical, horizontal, and coronal, or planar, or flat, I guess you could say, because we're working on planes, so it's all planar. So flat. So think about it as ways you can sort of cut your body, basically, is I think some of the ways personal trainers might talk about it. As this kind of comes from some of the personal training stuff. So you can cut your body in half this way, cut your body in half this way. You can cut your body in half this way. So sort of flat. So we're going to work on those. We're just going to start in a neutral stance, feet shoulder width apart. But I want to have, again, I want that little bend in the knees. Helps create that sinking feeling, rooting feeling, and being able to start building some of those connections on either, anterior, posterior chains and all that other stuff through. With the tailbone tucked in, shoulders and hips lined up, knees and feet aligning together. So if you were to bend further, the knees should shoot out right over the feet. And I want you to practice sort of feeling the weight of the body through the heels. Now what we're going to do is we're going to push side to side, and I'm going to drop a little bit so you can actually use my window to show. And with very little bobbing, you see I'm not really breaking that plane of the top of the window. There's not this sort of thing or this going on. It's shifting side to side. Now also, I know I got a big old shirt going on today. Now also too, notice there's not dipping or jutting on either side. I'm not leaning back. I'm not, hinging either. Shoulders over the hips, by way the crown over the way in the perineum, and pushing from heel to heel, side to side. This will also help as we get involved with some of the stepping and everything later too. Now what we're also going to do is we're going to practice with our hips, turning 45 and 45. Now when the hips turn, the shoulders turn. The sternum and the navel stay vertically lined up. The shoulders and the hips stay vertically lined up. So the shoulders sitting on top of the hips. I'm not, again, maybe poor choice of wardrobe. But again, I'm not, you can kind of see with the light there. This is my navel, this is my sternum. They're going in almost like two different angles there. I don't want that. I want this. So basically what I'm going is in a 90-degree cone, and if I'm coming up from straight, I'm turning 45 straight, 45 straight. So just like we talked about with algebra, if you thought you weren't going to do math when you got older, you were wrong. Math is everywhere, including Tai Chi Chuan. Math. Anyway, 90-degree cone, 45 to 45. And as we shift side to side, we're going to pivot, again, around that central core, that hara line that goes from the crown straight through the middle of the body. That's almost like an axle. So if you tip a car on the side, and it's got one wheel on top, one wheel on the bottom, and it's moving that central axle that's connecting them. That's that body. This is the wheel, this is the other wheel, and we're rotating on that. So that's what we're going to do. Side and turn, side and turn, side and turn, push 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 and turn. Now, remember, we're going to combine our motions with the breathing. The gathering in is going to be the inhale. The expressing out is going to be the exhale. We want to lead our motions from the dantian, lower dantian. So it's almost like our body is going to be making the motions from here, and the rest of it is I don't want to say a reaction to it, but it's almost the shadow of it. This is where the real motion and where the real sort of money is going to be played, where the intent needs to be as well. Everything else is part of this. We want to move in a round, smooth fashion. Now, we're only going to play one hand in this video. What I want to do with the other hand is not leave it limp and kind of whatever. No good. Because this is a major, think of it like leak. Think of it like an electric leak. You're splitting the wires and you got stuff spurting out. The other way I'll put it is the same thing as if now, so I'm playing here and I let the arm go and then I pick it up again. Problems for a couple reasons. One, if we have someone's arm and we're holding it and we let it go, we just let them go. And then they can do all sorts of stuff to get back in and do whatever they're going to do. Number one. Number two, that has basically the analogy that I use a lot of times, if you're trying to take a bath, you don't put the drain before you're ready to take your bath, do you? No, you don't, or you shouldn't, because you're never going to fill the damn tub up. So you've got to keep that plug in there to keep the water rising and going. So keeping both sides engaged throughout, even if we play the yang form for an hour, keeping engaged throughout is important. It helps keep the qigong aspect running the way it's supposed to. Again, no energy leaks. The meditative aspect, again, your intent isn't now separated and pulled out between what you're doing and just a lazy sort of half asleep sort of thing that's out. Application wise, you're not letting someone go, or you're not, half-assing the application, or having to now work harder to do something that should be fairly easy and efficient. So we need to stay engaged throughout on both sides. Now, this is where I'm definitely taking a trick or tip from Chen Style Tai Chi, because a lot of times, even in the forms, you see the guys come in, was it here, you might see hand on the hip or hand under the dantian. And as they come in, and they can come up. One of the things that's doing is being able to keep that other side engaged. It's able to keep that electric circuit complete instead of taking some of that out, and then the circuit can't be complete. If we think of the meridians in our Qigong practice as basically electricity, that might help kind of bring the mind into that. We need to keep the circuit complete. So as I'm playing one hand, I usually prefer the hip as opposed to the dantian. So I have that. And again, one of the reasons for that is because then I can also kind of think of using it as pressing. So there's almost like a little, you got someone you're wrestling in here, you can pull their arm in, press it in, and then do whatever the technique or something you want to do with that too. It's even if you're doing like staff work and you come in and you bring the hand into the hip and press it in. So that helps. That's for one of my reasons for keeping the hand on the hip as opposed to dantian. You can do either one, but we're going to loop. So the first one is going to be like we scoop, lift up, pull across, and I'm actually going to exaggerate the motions for this. Yang style is usually going to be kind of within this shoulder hip range, or even the Chen style range, which is face groin. I'm going to extend it a little bit more because I really want to get the feeling of the dantian moving and the body behind it. And the body moves behind it. So this is going to be the first one with just one hand. Now, like I talked about with algebra, what you do on one side, you got to do on the other. So if I'm coming out this way, I'm going to come back the other way and push and smooth. So the other way we were lifting, pulling across and pulling down to scoop. This way we lift, push, smooth, up and over. And same thing with both hands. Ba, 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 ba. Several this way, several that way. So that's going to be the coronal plane. We're going to have the horizontal plane, which is going to be almost like polishing. Now, check out my elbow here. See on my wrist? I'm going to keep my wrist at shoulder height. You can do this at any height. But we're going to practice it up here first. Wrist is at shoulder height. Look where my elbow is. Look where my elbow is. I'll put the incredibly white thing in front of the black background here. Wrist, angle, down, elbow. This helps keep the shoulder relaxed. The difference I can feel as I lift that shoulder, I can definitely feel all, especially the anterior and especially, and the median, mid deltoid start lighting up with that. There's a little bit of tension there, but it's because I'm lifting. Hold that in and it drops out. You can't really do that if you even hold this in. You can relax, but it's still engaging in with that deltoid more than we want to. So we're going to smooth, smooth, and smooth, and then reverse, and reverse, and reverse. So that's going to be the horizontal. Smooth, 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 and reverse. You can also think of it as you're DJing a really big record. I don't know, it's the image I have in my head. Vertical, this way. Really important one. And we're going to make it almost like a bicycle. Push, pull down, come up to the shoulder, push out. And again, leading from here and out. This is where I'm really making the motion. Everything is coming out. It's almost going to look like a train arm that moves the wheel, except the whole body is moving it, not just the shoulder and elbow. And then the other way is almost like pulling in, like you grab a rope and pull in the rope. Those infinity ropes you might see at the gym, you're basically pulling in like an infinity rope. And same thing the other way, like a bicycle, pedal, and like a train. Now, that is essentially going to be what all of this is going to be based on. Those three planes, motions like that. It's going to be the combinations, and it's going to be the way we can slightly maybe rotate the forearm with the palm, making a fist, or a slight change in the intent, which is going to now be deconstructed and reconstructed into the different postures as we play, as well as the other sort of silk reeling kind of routines. So my main routine that I do with this is basically with the three planes. I'm working on building a sort of actual yang style silk reeling set based on the stuff coming out of the long form. I'm still tinkering with it. I'm still working on it. I know pretty much kind of where I want to go with it, but that's what I'm working on with that right now. That's kind of where we're going with it. So this is kind of like part 2 of the intro. And so yeah, that's going to be the setup. That's going to be what we're going to go with. And then next time, we're just going to go. All right, see you then.